Elizabeth, so you and I were just talking in the virtual green room per se, and I want to ask you about a quote that I heard you say on a podcast, and we'll start here.
Sure.
You said a lot of our clients have started climbing the ladder like crazy, not knowing where they are actually climbing to. And I want you to see if you could explain that for us a little bit, because I think the Triathlon listenership will know exactly what you're talking about, actually.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I say that as well, feeling that I did that earlier in my own, career as well. So many of my clients are coming out of decades long, very intense careers
Yeah.
where the next step in the career was not just obvious, but almost its own version of a handcuff, right? Because you keep getting more successful, you keep getting paid more. And if you're only asking yourself whether those are the criteria against which you want to measure a full life, the obvious answer is keep climbing. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that next rung is more money, or it's more prestige, or it's more influence. And what seems to happen a reasonable amount of time is people reach what feels like the natural conclusion of the career. And while they can acknowledge they've got the financial success they were after,
Yeah.
often somewhat confused by not feeling a sense of complete fulfillment
Yeah.
about what they've done with their lives. And then, even worse, not sure how to parlay all of this into a new chapter that is
Yeah.
going to feel meaningful and fulfilling. So that's what I mean by that, you can get so caught up in the climb that you
Yeah.
forget to look around you and ask if you like where you're going.
Exactly. And it happens to many. I
Yeah.
think maybe that's why my journey has resonated with so many people, because while I was climbing the ladder, I was
Yeah.
leveraging 9 to 5 just as much as it was leveraging me.
Mhm.
I was always traveling, upwards of 99 countries now. I started two other careers at the same time, being a federal agent and being a police officer.
Yep.
Because and this goes back to what I heard you talk about, the mosaic of life.
Yeah.
We gotta, like, man, the school system spits us out and makes us do these things and go after versions of success that we never even intended to go after it, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah. So I know can you explain to us what a retirement coach is? I know you're a retirement coach for executives, lawyers, and business professionals, what
Yep.
you do, how that started, and go for it.
You got it. Sure thing. So I'll give everybody a sense of what we do. So,
Yeah.
I, as background, one of the challenges that I observed 15 years ago when we started this work with the idea of retiring, given that that's the inflection point where we tend to meet our clients, is that all we are ever told to do our whole lives is save money, right, in order to prepare
Yeah.
for this moment.
Yeah.
And what I learned the hard way, retiring early myself from an intense career, and then used those lessons to build my own programming. What I learned the hard way was there is so much more to plan for than money. And honestly, I'm not diminishing how important it is to feel a sense of financial security. Of course, right? We all need to get there eventually, whatever that means for us. But the real myth is that's all you need. And that if
Yeah.
you've got the money piece figured out, the whole rest of your life just snaps into place. That could not be further from the truth. And what we see over and over and over again with people is that they do have that piece figured out and they're scratching their heads, mystified why the rest of it isn't snapping into place. They're very unsettled because they suddenly realize, wait a minute, I'm going to lose my sense of self. I'm going to lose my sense of agency and effectiveness. I'm losing my community. My life structure is completely built around this intense career. I don't
Yeah.
know how to ask what I want, much less how to go get it. All that stuff is hard to confront when you have been at the service of other people for decades,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
So it's just what we do is help them literally sit down and create a design for their next chapter that takes into account their physical well-being, their relationship world, how they're going to stay mentally and spiritually engaged, what those things mean to them, how are they going to deploy their financial resources in meaningful ways,
Yeah.
how do you structure a perfect day? I mean, you and I have so many
Yeah.
I love, but it gets them
Yeah.
to the creator mode, right?
Yep.
And into that intentional mode. So that's the essence of our work. And the only reason I ended up in this line of business was because I had to solve the this entire problem for myself.
For yourself. Yeah. You talked about the creator mode. You know what? So my listenership knows, but I worked for Accenture for 25 years.
Yeah.
I never yeah, so many people like they'll crap on their corporate career after or something. I'm so grateful to the skills and the opportunities. What I did that was right for my journey, but I try to tell people about it is I didn't go after partner. I was asked to go into the partner track 4 times. I declined it
Yep.
because I was like, for this X amount of money more, that's like 30 hours more a week plus management scrutiny. I'm trying to be a police officer and
Right.
travel and do all these things and stuff like that. And we just kind of accept these things. So when I left, it was hard for me, but I
Yes.
give you a statement. I tell people that I got my brain back.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that literally my brain was on loan for 25 years. I'm a
Mhm.
very technical and engineering degree,
Mhm.
technical IT guy oriented. And the moment I left, I started becoming creative.
Right.
It's incredible. Can you talk a little bit about that creator mindset that you have to help people shift into because they're so used to being at the beck and call of building somebody else's dream?
Yes, absolutely. And it's one of the biggest mindset shifts we talk about in our work because most people aren't even aware that the mindset of reactor is actually what they have developed. You know,
Reactor.
reactor. And I laugh because the word reactor and creator have the identical letters in them, but they mean very different things, right? What an interesting
Ah,
thing. But
yeah.
I mentioned to people, you're an excellent reactor. You wake up every day, you flip open your laptop, and there were who knows how many email messages waiting for you to react to. You know,
Yep.
there's a steady stream of content coming at you in most career environments, even ones you create yourself. I mean, come on, that's what happens is everybody's telling you all day long what they need you to do and when they need you to show up and
Yes.
how you need to perform, right?
Yeah.
And so the skill of reacting to that content gets very, very strong and well honed. And that's a good thing. And it serves you well when you're in those environments. But when you're asked to set all that down and you're going to wake up on day one after all that ends and
Yeah.
suddenly nobody's telling you what to do all day, it gets very disorienting
It
because you've
does.
got to shift your mind into no, 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 I'm authoring what's going to happen to my days. I'm authoring what my year's about, what my months are about, what my weeks are about. It's not an impossible thing to do. It's just a skill that many of my clients anyway have not been actively using. So it's important to give them tools and practice to say, all right,
Yeah.
let's start building it together. What would it look like? You know?
That's amazing. And I'm glad you say that. I was fortunate in that I was already a real estate investor. So I had that with me already.
Yeah.
And then when people did start asking me to help them design their life, this whole trylifeon.com and trylifeon coaching came to be while I was starting my initial exit. So I tell people that I retired, or excuse me, got off career highway at age 46 and I
Yep.
merged right onto lifestyle lane.
Yep.
Don't think
I love that.
it's that common for people to have it all. I didn't have it planned. It just kind of happened organically. But
Definitely.
how are you helping them if you have to get them from being a reactor to a creator? Like maybe give 2 tools you might
Mhm.
suggest because the folks who are listening, they're starting to get it, right? They're starting to see that
Yep.
the day is coming. Either they don't want to do that thing anymore, the employer is going to tell them you can't do that thing anymore, or they age out.
That's right. It's
What is
any of those
it's
things.
coming, it's coming, it's
Absolutely.
coming. No matter what, it's
Oh,
coming. Yeah.
there's, yeah.
What are some tools that you might suggest?
Sure. I've got two of my favorites. And again,
Yeah.
one of them, funny enough, when I was getting familiar with your material, I was like, oh my gosh, we have a very similar exercise we work with people on. But one of the
Yeah.
things when we usually sit down, you know, in our most intimate work with people, it's 2 days, one person, two coaches. So we go really, really deep with people. But during that process, one of the exercises we facilitate them through live is say, I want you to walk me through your perfect day. I want you to
Okay.
get very granular with me. I want you to tell me how you start your day, when you start your day, and I want you to suspend all of the shoulds. I want you to take yourself out of this mindset that you have things other people are going to make you do, and I just want you to make up a perfect day, a day you'd get to the end of and say, wow, now that's a day I'd be happy to live again. Like that was a good one. And we're looking more for themes like when do you like to be physically active? When are you social? When do you like to have your mental focus time? When do you like your contemplation time? Or what are the things you always wish you had time in the day for, but you keep never making time for? So we build that together. And that's a fun exercise because it's very low stakes. It's just a thought experiment. But what I
Yeah.
usually see happen is that people start to get somewhat excited and energized, right, by the idea that like, whoa, I could make a day up. Like, when did I ever do that? I mean, we don't do that when we're kids. We never do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like a luxury you feel like you don't have. So we do that. The second tool that I think is just a massive, massive sort of secret that it's so easy. Anyone can buy one on Amazon for $20. We
Okay.
tell people, we roll one out in the room, but we tell people to go buy an annual planning calendar. It's a big laminated 1 year at a glance thing, right?
Oh, wow.
It's pretty
Yeah.
big. But
Yeah.
when do you ever get to visualize a whole year ahead? Never. We never do it. Our screen real estate is way too small for that. But it changes your thinking when you put yourself in front of a year and you say, all right, if I get to December 31st of this year and it's
Hmm.
been spectacular, what
Hmm.
have I seen? Where have I gone? What were the projects I finished? What were the things I learned? What are the new skills I decided to acquire? You know what I mean? Like, what are the adventures I had? Where was I? Just build it. Let's build it and put your known knowns in. You know where what holidays are about, maybe. You know where certainly, repeating family trips are or birthdays. But people get excited because they're beginning to literally get their hands in the clay of their lives. And
Yep.
it's exactly what you're talking about, right? Instead of
Yep.
thinking about limitation and, oh, I can't do all these things because I'm so busy. No, get rid of all that. What do you want? Like, let's get into that. And
Yep.
even if we have to then make it more realistic, and that's okay, at least you've let yourself dream some. And that to me is the beginning of getting into that creator, both mindset and actual activity.
So drafting a perfect day in the Try Life On mantra is where I tend to start with people.
Hmm?
And I have found that probably 95% of the coaching students or clients that I work with, they've forgotten how to dream. Because
Exactly.
usually when they draft the perfect day, they end up drafting a very responsible day on the first iteration. And I'm like, come on. And then, I'm a very I'm very unapologetic about life. I will challenge people and then some because I got to be a kid my whole life by being a street cop and all that type of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
I wonder what it's like. Maybe give the listeners a little bit of taste of the challenge you've seen from maybe you may have stated it already, but I'm going to say it again. The challenge you've seen to get people's minds to open up back towards the dream state.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not even just a mind shift. It's almost like their minds have to start to rewire back to being the 10-year-old kid who used to go explore the woods out behind the house. I don't
Yep.
think because our you're right. It goes back to being the reactor, the person who's always scheduled, the person who's been answering the phone for the boss and things of that nature.
Mhm.
That I have found that to be one of the toughest things to do. My assumption is that that's the biggest wall you run into with your individual clients versus the enterprise ones.
Yep, agreed completely. So one of, a lot of where we work on those issues is around mindsets, and there are
Mindset.
others
Yeah.
from others we talk about from reactor to creator. We also talk about, look, you're used to being in a place of mastery. You're
Yep.
used to largely controlling how things go. You're used to knowing how things are going to go. That's what you're paid for, right? You're paid to get things right. You're
Yep.
not paid to experiment. You're not paid to play. You're not paid to take a risk. I mean, usually you're not. You're paid to get everything as under control as possible. So we have to really help people recognize like that's okay. That's where you've been, and that's been great, of great service to you. But get practiced at experimentation, get practiced
Yeah.
at letting yourself play with no, it doesn't have to have a serious purpose. And also begin to see yourself as a student of these new things, not a master of them. So, like somebody might say, well, I've always wanted to learn to play the piano, but I really don't like being bad at things. And I'm going to have to be really bad at this for a long
And
time. So
yeah.
I'm like, no, no, no. You're judging yourself as a pianist on day one. You can't do that. Judge yourself as a student of the piano. You can be a great student.
Love
And
it.
then suddenly it's like, oh, you're right. Okay. So I just simply remind people that, like, sure, I get it. You want to feel a sense of competence and mastery, but just reframe it. Be a competent student. You will one day learn your way to mastery, but you can't hold yourself to that standard on day one. And in fact, you didn't do that when you started your career either. You were new and you knew it and you learned and you got there. So
Um,
it's a new, exciting adventure if you let it be.
yep.
No, but you got to like let that, you got to put the critical mind on the bench. And it's like, yeah, thank you for your input. Now sit, you know?
Yeah, and it's hard for people to do it. I always talk about 20 to 30 years of formal education has told us what to do, how to be this person's version of success, et cetera. But then we go into 20, 30 years of being an executive or a nonprofit person
Yeah.
or a laborer, and then we're wired even more. And people really do have to start to unlearn so many of the things that they've learned in the past. There's a Tri-Life principle called life is to be, one of the Tri-Life principles is life is something you practice. It's not a destination.
Right.
So people see me floating around the world and living in different countries and stuff. It used to be very expensive because I wasn't used to it.
Hmm.
And then over time, I continue to practice it, practice it, practice it, practice it. And I'm so good at it that, I can be in the Mideast on a Monday and fly back to DC in time to take my son to school, take him there because I started unlearning the normal way of living, if you will, in favor of, no, I'm just going to live in an expansive way.
Yep.
But one of the things people will always bring up is the idea of money, of
Hmm.
course.
Sure.
What have you seen? And real estate was my way of actually, I'm not even going to say, I'm going to talk with you about it. What have you seen with the folks that you work with? Are they prepared? Are they nervous? Have they set up streams of income? Did they default to the typical 401k, which they can't even tap until they're 65? I
Hmm.
think that's the thing that not only is it the thing that makes people nervous, it's the
Hmm.
thing that keeps people working and giving up more time for money even longer than we should be. So what are you seeing in the financial space with those you work with?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Well, again, many of my clients are they're just in careers where they are paid very well, and so
Yep.
they often are able to retire earlier than 65 just because they've got what set aside what they've stuck in their 401k. They've just got a lot of other money. But here's the interesting thing I see
Yeah.
often with this population of people, because they've made more than they spend, generally speaking, they haven't really ever looked at what they spend very closely. And
Mm.
so they get nervous about moving from saver to spender. In other words, like you've saved up the iceberg. Now you got to start melting it in service of freedom and
Yeah.
time. And it's like, ooh, that's a very uncomfortable idea. What if I run out of money? And because they have not got that much visibility into what goes out, they really aren't comfortable yet about what is that analysis. And so I always say to them, if you don't have enough visibility into that question yet, you really need to get it. You need to sit down with your advisor or whoever it is, whether even if it's you, sit down and run those numbers, have a realistic scenario, understand what's going out, understand what you need to sustain the lifestyle you have for this decade, the next decade, build in contingencies, but the analysis matters, and I'm all
Yeah. Yeah.
surprised at how many people really haven't done it. They haven't had to pay that much attention if they've been, earning a lot of income. So that's
Yeah.
one thing. The second thing is people will agonize about spending money on the things they want to go do. So let's just use travel
Oh,
as an obvious one, right?
yeah.
Suddenly they've got freedom. And they're
Yeah.
like, wow, I have this like list of 20 places I want to go, but I'm not quite sure I have enough. I'm worried every time I book a trip, am I killing my retirement plan? And I say, no, build a permission budget into your planning. So if you want to spend X dollars a year on travel, just assume you spent it, run the numbers and see if you're still okay. So you don't have to examine that worry every time you go to enjoy yourself. And I think it's being proactive about those things that gives people a sense of agency and control with the financial question, even when they objectively have more money than they're ever going to spend.
Are people okay, so I live my life off of cash flow.
Yeah,
I did a really good job buying real estate and paying it off instead of chasing more. I just
right,
kept paying stuff off. And then fortunately, I have a couple of pensions from my military service and my social
great.
service as well. I'm such a cash flow person because we can buy groceries with cash flow. You can't
Yep,
buy groceries with equity. You have to go sell something. So I'm
right.
curious if people are coming out equity heavy. Have they thought about cash flow or income? Let me just say income streams. Have they thought about income streams or like what's the dynamic between the two?
I think your point about a diversity of income streams
Yeah.
that you understand and that you have a reasonable amount of control over is an incredibly bulletproof way to set yourself up.
Yep.
I would say many of my clients have been much more oriented toward an income that has been very hefty. So they've saved a lot of
They
money.
saved a lot of capital.
Yeah. And so they've got a lot of, investable liquid assets that, of course, you're correct. You'd have to then liquidate equities or funds or whatever, but they can do those things.
They
And
can
if
do those things there. They got to shift it to something
exactly,
that pays.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
so, I think they look at those strategies when they sit down and get serious about, how am I funding my daily life once I stop chasing this salary I have right now. But, the other thing I'd say is many of the people we work with have this myth in their minds that when they quote unquote retire from this thing, they'll never make money again. That's almost never true,
Oh,
right? There are
yeah.
so many options to engage in the world. And you should never make the assumption no one's ever going to pay you again. In fact, that's the least likely scenario. The more likely scenario is if you get your teeth into something you love, where you're adding value to the world, you're going to get compensated for that. Who knows exactly how? And the whole goal is to make it up in a way
Yeah.
that suits you perfectly, the way you did, as opposed to say, well, the only way to earn money is to be someone's employee or all these other limiting ideas we have. So anyway, I'm a big fan of thinking about let's define what would be ideal and let's see
hmm
how close we can get.
I love it. And I tend to be a very transparent person. So, but I want people to be empowered. So
Yes.
I'm gonna, I, I posted this years ago. I don't remember when, but when I exited corporate, my salary was 200 and change, maybe 210 or something like that. The year that I left, even though I had income, my friend, I was petrified. I
Oh
was
yeah.
petrified to leave because between military, police, and corporate, I had six paychecks coming in for the last 15 years, six paychecks a month.
Sure.
I mean, even though I had revenue from real estate to cover me, I was petrified. But
Sure.
interestingly, what happened, so I had 200 roughly coming in from corporate. And then when my creator mind kicked in and then this Try Life On thing started, I spent money on it. And I tend to be someone who just does things and course corrects along the way.
Mhm.
I got help from a media company and they were like, listen, you can coach and you'll generate revenue. Because I was posting a lot, I got more investors from my real estate company. So in that first year after I left, I made five times, it was almost $1 million of
Yeah.
revenue that I generated. And I would have never, ever thought I could generate that amount of money.
Right.
And what I try to get across to people is the skill set that you have coming out of corporate or wherever you're coming from.
Sure.
LinkedIn, for example, there's 900 million people on LinkedIn. You find 10, you
Hmm.
have a customer base
Yes.
who want your information, but it's not something that is highly talked about. I think that's why people have so much fear.
Exactly. I would agree 100% with that. I mean, one of the points we make is that never has the world been so full of opportunity in the sense that, right, you can literally set yourself up to write, to speak, to interview people, to publish material, to broadcast material, to
Yeah.
offer services in the number of ways you can put your own viewpoints and thinking and services out there is unbelievable. I mean, even to go back 20 years, and it was a fraction of what it is now.
Yeah.
So it's more about recognizing that there is just an unreal array of opportunities out there. And then you've got to start thinking about, what do you love? What are the modalities you enjoy that you're going to do just because you love them? If you love what you're doing and you figure it out and learn how to do these things, the rest takes care of itself. And it sounds like that's exactly what you did. You put yourself out there in a way
Yeah,
that was
I just tried.
energizing. And the next thing you know, it's like, whoa, I didn't even try to do this. And look what happened.
Yeah. Well, so you're a great case study of the same thing. So I want to pivot to you, Elizabeth the
Sure.
person, Liz or Elizabeth the
Yeah,
person.
sure.
Um, my brain keyed when I found out that you left DC. Because
Yes.
obviously I'm from the obviously I'm based out of the DC area, kind of. I believe you were an attorney.
Yes.
You hit some wall at some point, right? Can
Yep.
you just explain your own journey? And actually, it ties right into what you're saying, where you took your own experience, your own skill set, and you transferred it into creating a company, writing a book. But go back to being
Yeah.
corporate per se, and what happened in your journey that kind of shifted you towards all this work?
Sure. Love it. Yes. Just to go back even slightly further, I mean, I was
Yeah.
always the little high achiever type, even as a little kid. So, boy, nothing thrilled me more than getting A's, straight A's. I was like dead set on being valedictorian in my high school. Like, why? I don't know, but I just was. And so I did. And, so I had that like just absolutely relentless, got to be, the best of the best, at least try to be. And I never really stopped to ask what was driving me in that regard. But I mean, I took that same mindset when I got into law school. I decided to go at night and work full time the whole 4 years. I was at
Oh, wow.
Georgetown. It was insane, right? Like I think I slept 4 hours a night for 4 years. It was crazy.
Yeah.
It's almost like I don't know what I have to prove to the world, but I'm busy
Yeah.
proving it.
Yeah.
Anyway, came out of that, did very, very well, landed a job at a top Wall Street firm. And I was looking around thinking, like, do I really belong here? Like, who knows? I mean, I just couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, I am working at one of the best firms in the world. I'm
Yeah.
handling these massive transactions. I'm traveling around the world. I'm working with the smartest people I can imagine. And I did that for 10 years, but you've got to bring it. I mean, there are hundreds of other people happy to step right into your seat. So you get into this thinking of, you never stop and ask, is this what I want? You don't stop and ask, am I too tired? Or do I know what I'm doing? You just make it happen. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
so, of course, along the way, though, life happened. I got married, I had two kids. And one day I woke up, like with a 3-year-old and an 18-month-old and an 80-hour-a-week job. And like you, I was being told, you're on the partnership track, you're doing great, but you're going to have to go spend time in London, time in New York, and you're going to have to get exposed to more partners in the firm to be made a partner. And in fact, I was being told, there's a deal we're going to put you on. You're going to have to move to London for 6 months. And I literally, in that moment, I mean, I'd been thinking about it, but I just literally was like typing at my desk going, no, don't put me on that deal because I'm
You're
getting
like,
notice.
amazing.
And I was like, I just can't do it all. And, I was not going to be a superstar as a mother and a lawyer in that context. And so
Mm.
that was when I, like, as you mentioned before the call, I base jumped out of my
Your
life.
base jumped out of your life. I love it. I
I
love it.
sure did.
Yeah.
And it was almost the only way I could do it. I had to imagine a complete rewrite of everything. And so that's when I moved from DC. I mean, I grew up on the East Coast in Virginia, so that was a big change. I moved to Tucson. We just had a cooler lifestyle. I love the outdoors. I had a law school. I was like, all right, maybe I can make something work here. And I
Yeah.
figured I have enough money saved. I bought myself some time to figure it out. And I remember saying to myself, I'm front ending my retirement a little bit. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all I'm
Yeah.
doing. But I
Yeah.
use that word retirement to explain what I was doing. And again, it led me to falsely believe as long as I had enough money to feed my family for a few years and settle down, I would be fine. And what I was not prepared for was the complete loss of identity and life structure,
Yes. Yes.
meaning, stimulation, community. It was crazy, right? So I had to spend a few years recomposing all of that and really digging into like, what were the blind spots I had? Because this was not what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And in doing so, I literally ended up building the content for the programming, I've been offering for 15 years. And it also ended up defining my own reinvention. So to your
Amazing.
point, sometimes the big messes we make are end up being the very opportunities we never could have dreamed of. And I remind my clients of that same thing. It's okay that it gets messy for a while because out of the mess comes the gold.
I love not knowing what I'm going to do. I think we're so structured nowadays that we just expect like everything to be rigid and rigid and rigid.
Yeah.
And when someone like you, Lee, or both of us, we left and we just kind of had to figure some stuff out. But I want folks listening to recognize, okay, here's Maurice, and you guys know Maurice's story. And I leverage all those corporate and military and government experiences right into whatever I wanted to do now from a creative perspective. You have a legal background. You were a massive high achiever, to
Mhm.
not to mention a matriarch of a family, and
Yep.
you took that decision. You're like, F it, I'm just gonna go for it.
That was about it.
Yeah, I know that feeling. I think it's great that we're two examples, and I just want to throw something out there that just popped into my head.
Hmm.
Again, I'm grateful for my police department, my military service, and my corporate entity. But the 25 years that was the knowledge and the relationships and the let's say the corporate knowledge that was Maurice Philogene, 48 hours after I was gone, the void filled.
Oh, yeah.
The void, you kind of think you've been there for so long, so you have so much corporate knowledge that it's going to be very difficult for people to overcome the fact that you're gone.
Yep.
Oh,
No.
this is what I'm warning people about is not only is your position, then they filled it with someone half my pay,
Mhm.
15 years younger than me. You have to think about these things before you jump out.
Yep.
You and I are great examples. Can you talk a bit about your book, and then I'll start to wrap us up a bit. But
Of
I
course.
loved hearing about your book, and congratulations on the release.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I have had, an itch to write this book for probably 6 or 7 years. And of course, like anybody who wrote a book, they'll tell you it's hard. It's
Yeah,
a hard project.
for
And,
sure.
I knew that I was developing a lot of insight into what was going on with people when they're thinking about retiring. And I felt like we need to change the conversation about this because right now, all anyone thinks about is their financial situation. There's so much more to think about. It's a huge opportunity. We got to think of it as a graduation, not a retreat. So I started thinking about all that stuff. And I noticed when I would talk to people just socially about what I did for a living, every single time people would say to me, you know what? I know 6 people that need to talk to you. My dad needs to meet you. You know what I mean? I'm like,
There's your customer base.
freaking epidemic out here.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that got me really motivated to sit down and start working on the ideas and the structure. So I really just tried to organize in a way that somebody without a facilitator in the room could potentially use the material to at least begin to bring themselves through the thinking
yeah,
that help them, move into the direction of seeing this as an inflection point full of possibility and opportunity, get ahead of some of these things you should plan for so you don't end up in the pit of doom for
yeah, exactly.
unnecessarily. Yeah. So anyway, I felt inspired to hopefully provide a tool really to help people that maybe don't have the luxury or the time to go work with a coach or even just begin to change the discussion about retirement. So those were my goals with the book. And I've gotten a lot of really wonderful feedback. So it's been rewarding to just have the chance to, share some of these ideas.
Awesome. By the way, did you self-publish or did you get a publisher to do it?
So I looked at every scenario and I
Yeah,
went with a
curious for myself.
hybrid, yeah, with a hybrid publisher who did do a lot of work with me, but I
Nice,
was able to retain all my IP ownership. The
nice.
speed of release was way faster than a traditional publishing house, and it felt like the right solution. So I worked with a hybrid publisher called Publish. They've been fantastic. And,
Yeah,
I talked to so many people who'd written books, and their comment was, the traditional publishers, that all sounds very elite, but it's taking years to get books out now. And it's not as nimble a platform, So I have no regrets with what I did.
yeah. Yet another example of you moving from reactor to creator.
Yeah.
You wrote your own book. It's been
Yeah.
something that's been on my mind for quite some time. But I have the space to go create now. So
For sure.
your book is Encore: A High Achiever's Guide to Thriving in Retirement.
Yep.
Which that word retirement is still a tough one for me. I don't really Are people actually retiring, or are people just, as you say, just graduating to the next?
Yeah.
It's
It's
like
it's
it's not our parents' generation
a
definition.
completely outdated concept.
Yeah,
And
okay, okay.
and
I'm
I
with you.
could not agree more. So every time I talk about this book, I'm like, hey, I only use the word because there is no other good
There's
word
no other
to
word. Yeah,
explain the moment everybody thinks they're headed toward. But it's a painful concept for every single person we work with because they're like, can we not use that word? I'm like, we do not have to use that word. But I
yeah,
literally couldn't think of any other way to help my readership understand what it is we were going to be discussing in this book because it is a pain point for people, and
totally.
and it is still the word corporate America uses. It's the word law firms use when their partners leave. It's the word everybody uses in the working world to describe the moment that you move on to something new. And it's just such a bad word. you know?
And it's the only thing we associate. But now the way I talk about it is like, nah, it's time for you to start trying life on a different way.
Exactly.
We're just not this notion that everything stops is
Right.
garbage. It just
Right.
that's it's not true. Doesn't exist. There are coaches like yourself and me. We do our things a different way, but there are certainly a lot of us folks out there trying to help. Can you
Yep.
just express your coaching business and how folks can find it as well?
Absolutely. The best place to find me, we have a business that works with organizations, but we also have a business that works with individuals. So if you look for me on LinkedIn, Elizabeth Zalinka Parsons, you will find both of those websites. You'll find a link to the book. You'll find lots of other podcasts and articles I've written. So any of my material, services, et cetera,
Cool.
that's the best sort of aggregated spot.
Amazing. Well, I'm glad we found each other.
Likewise.
This conversation couldn't have come at a better time, but frankly, people are, I feel maybe my reticular activating system is just picking up people who have this
Yeah.
pain point a lot because it's what I talk about a lot. It's what you talk about a lot.
Yep.
But folks need to get empowered by
Yes.
tracking down information that is relevant to this particular journey rather than always focusing on whatever their employer is trying to tell them. I think you are a great example of someone who can help them. And I'm very happy you came on the podcast today.
Well, thank you. This has been a total pleasure. I feel like I've, met somebody our brains are in sync, that we
Sure.
think about life. It's great.
For sure. Well, I'm happy to be a creator with you,
Yes,
Elizabeth, and I look forward to seeing you in the future.
absolutely. Me too.
All right.
Thanks again.
You got it. Hey guys, this is Maurice, host of the Try Life On podcast, and thank you for listening to another episode. I hope you are finding it useful in helping you design your own lifestyle that you don't need a vacation from. If that's the case, please consider dropping a review for me, whether in Apple, iTunes, or in Spotify. Drop a review, put some stars on it, give me some feedback on how I can make the podcast better, what information you are looking for. I am doing my best to get information to you on the Try Life On principles, the 5 freedoms, how to build lifestyle, travel hacking, all of it. And I want to do it for you. So please do a review for me. And until next time, my name is Maurice Philogene, and this is the Try Life On podcast. Peace.